The world just stopped. The sound of those handcuffs snapping shut around Tracy's wrists ripped straight through the peaceful hum of our Saturday, turned every neighbor's head, and locked my feet to the porch. Three strangers in matching tactical vests, badges gleaming, hauled my wife off the garden dirt like she'd just robbed a bank. I caught a glimpse of Laura Thompson, clipboard in one hand, her phone in the other, live streaming the whole circus, while the crowd across the street cheered and called me every name but innocent. And all this, every last bit of it, because of a flat of yellow marigolds Tracy picked up at the garden center. They thought they had it figured out. That's the thing about people who crave control. They think the story belongs to them until the very last scene. But they didn't know who I was. They didn't know the one lesson every decent law enforcement officer learns before he ever pins on a badge: the truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how deep you try to bury it. And today the truth was coming for them. Now I've dealt with chaos. I've spent 18 years as a federal law enforcement officer. The kind of job where you see what happens when people with too much power and too little patience decide they're judge, jury, and executioner. But nothing I'd seen in a courtroom or a back alley ever prepared me for the way one quiet weekend in Colorado could unravel into a full-blown neighborhood meltdown, all because Tracy wanted to plant a little beauty in the world. Back up with me, will you? It started simple. October sun, mountain air, sharp as clean linen. Tracy in her oldest college sweatshirt jeans she refuses to throw away, and a grin wide enough to shame the Rockies. She's a third-grade teacher. She'll stop to tie a kid's shoe or rescue a worm off the sidewalk, and that same heart just can't stand an empty flower bed. I brewed the coffee, watched her through the kitchen window. She was out there early, humming, planting, talking to the marigolds like they were shy students on the first day of school. That's when I noticed her across the street, standing rigid as a fence post, white polo, starched binoculars fixed on my wife's every move. Laura Thompson. Later I'd learn her name. Right then, she was just the neighbor who'd never waved, never smiled, never missed a chance to measure a blade of grass with a tape. She scribbled notes, watched Tracy with that sour intensity only the lonely can muster. Tracy tried to wave. Laura disappeared inside her house like she'd been burned. "Honey." She keeps staring. Tracy called through the open window, her voice shaky but small. I brushed it off. "Some people have too much time," I told her, gave her shoulders a squeeze. Never guessed that little shrug would light the fuse on the longest day of my life. Hours passed, sun higher. Laura came back, but this time she brought backup. Two strangers, a woman with a stern bun and a security patch barely clinging to her sleeve, and a guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere but here, clipboard shaking in his hands. Laura led the charge, armed with a camera and a yellow measuring tape, snapping photos and narrating into her phone about unapproved landscaping and community standards violations. "Ma'am, I started aiming for calm. We're just planting flowers." Laura looked at me like I was a toddler who'd colored on the wall. Article 47B, subsection 3. Non-native species. 2 hours to remove these or enforcement action follows. Her security goons nodded, playing their part. Tracy stood up, dirt on her hands, confusion in her eyes. "We never heard about any committee. We don't even have an HOA. Didn't matter. Laura was already on the phone, voice trembling with victory. "Jim, it's happening. Bring Margaret. Escalating as planned." Tracy tugged my sleeve, worried. "Maybe we should just—" "No," I said, stubborn and stupid in equal measure. "They can't do anything." Laura smiled cold. "The paperwork is on its way." She leaned in, told Tracy, "You don't have to protect him anymore." Then turned and walked away, cloak of martyrdom billowing behind her. That's when it stopped being a neighborhood spat. When you see someone convinced they're the hero, when their whole world tilts around the idea that only they can save the day, you should know you're in trouble. And Laura had a ghost haunting her steps. A daughter named Emma, lost in a car wreck 2 years gone. She'd built a fortress of rules and regulations around that grief, decided the only way to keep tragedy at bay was to police the world into order. And she'd chosen Tracy, gentle, sunny Tracy, as the next damsel in her crusade. By 10, Laura's reinforcements circled our house like storm clouds. They documented, measured, muttered about enforcement action. By 11, the county sheriff's cruiser rolled up lights cold and blue in the daylight. That's when my gut twisted. Not because of the badge, but because Laura had somehow sold her version of events to real law enforcement. Deputy Patterson stepped out all business. "Sir, I'm responding to a domestic situation reported by Mrs. Thompson." He carried a tablet footage loaded, edited, of course Laura's story on loop, my voice pitched low and threatening. Tracy's turned small and afraid. "Mrs. Mitchell, are you safe?" he asked Tracy, gentle like she was made of glass. Tracy, baffled, tried to explain. The more she talked, the more Patterson's brow furrowed. Then Laura made her play live streaming for transparency. Neighbors cheered. Comments flashed by federal overreach abuse, "Save her." I tried to show my badge, explain who I was. Laura cut in. "See, he's using his authority to silence us." The crowd online and in person roared for blood. Every time I opened my mouth, I sounded less like a man and more like the villain in Laura's script. And then handcuffs. Tracy pulled away, terrified. Margaret recited Miranda from her phone. Rob fumbled with the keys. Laura's phone captured every second. I snapped. "United States Marshals Service. Everyone freeze." The world stopped. Rob's hands shook. Margaret stepped back. Deputy Patterson's eyes went wide. He recognized the weight of my badge the way someone who's worn one long enough can always spot the difference. I laid it out, voice clipped and official for the crowd, the cameras for Laura's precious live stream. "You are witnessing unlawful detention by individuals falsely representing police authority. Release my wife now." Patterson checked my ID again this time, the gravity sinking in. Margaret let Tracy go, color draining from her face. Rob muttered apologies, peeled off his security patch. Laura, silent for the first time, kept recording, hoping to salvage a shred of her story. But the story was over, or so I thought. Inside, Tracy trembling, I called my supervisor. The outside world had caught up. "Mitchell, what the hell is happening?" CNN's calling. Laura's clip, "Federal agent bullies grieving woman," had gone viral. Her version trended. Mine was paperwork and procedure. Tracy read the comments. "They're calling for you to be fired. They think you arrested her for planting flowers." I told her the truth always takes the long way around. But then the twist. Bob Anderson, our neighbor, showed up with his own footage, unedited shot from across the yard. He had Laura coaching Margaret Robb, suiting up. Ahmed down the street found county records, no HOA, no standards committee, no jurisdiction. Bob had receipts. Laura had been collecting fake fees from neighbors for months. Fines for mailbox colors, threats about landscaping. The whole thing a scam built on authority no one gave her. Deputy Patterson came back folder thick with evidence, fake badges, phony legal docs, Laura's plans for community intervention. The county prosecutor filed charges. Fraud, impersonation, unlawful detention. Bob's video hit social media, and suddenly Laura's hashtag support crumbled under the weight of the truth. But Laura didn't let go. She staged a rally, banners fluttering, hired her nephew as a cameraman, tried to turn the tide. The crowd was small. Patterson showed up not to arrest me, but to serve Laura papers, restraining order, criminal complaint, fraud. He read it out loud, let the whole neighborhood hear. Someone in the crowd muttered, "So there's no HOA?" Laura tried to play her evidence video, but the title flashed on the big screen, HA Roleplay V3, Final.mp4. The silence that followed was heavy, the kind of quiet that sinks deep. Margaret broke first, stood up, confessed. Rob came, dumped his fake badges on the table, apologized. Bob showed the receipts, the texts, the evidence. Laura's world, built so carefully, collapsed in the mountain breeze. The rally dissolved into a handful of confused neighbors and a live stream audience that turned nasty, then bored. And still the truth wasn't done. 2 weeks later, Tracy and I sat in the county sheriff's office. Patterson laid out the file. Laura's daughter Emma lost to a careless driver. Laura's obsession with rules, her need to save one more woman, to stop one more tragedy. There were photos, notes, unsent letters, proof of a grief so raw it poisoned everything she touched. The sentencing came in November. The judge kind but clear. Grief explains but does not excuse. Laura, 1 year in jail, 2 years probation, restitution to her victims, grief counseling, and a ban on contact with any of us. Margaret, community service. Rob, a year of probation. The judge ordered Laura's restitution to fund a memorial garden for Emma, a place for the community to heal. Tracy designed the garden. Yellow marigolds, birdhouses painted by Tracy's students, benches donated by neighbors. The wind chimes hung from the sheriff's office handcuffs and fake badges remade into something softer, gentler. Some mornings we'd see Laura tending flowers quieter, learning to let go. Not every story ends with forgiveness. Sometimes healing happens in silence, dew on a park bench, birdhouses that don't match a welder teaching a kid how to fix what's broken. Rules matter. So does kindness. Justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about learning when to stop controlling others and start growing something beautiful from the wreckage. That's the story I lived. That's the lesson Laura taught us without ever meaning to. Sometimes redemption looks like a garden full of color. Wind chimes singing a new tune and a community learning that the best authority is the one you use to lift people up, not hold them down. What about you? When have you seen control turn toxic or justice take an unexpected shape? Do you think grief can ever excuse the damage someone causes, or is there a line you can't cross no matter how much you've lost? Drop your story in the comments, and let's talk about what real justice looks like right here, where the flowers finally got to bloom.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.